Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, at Warcheck if you want to call me by my in-game name. And in this video, we're going to be going over the monthly meta. For those of you who are new, we're going to be covering all of the most popular decks that fall into each class. Again, that's some of the more popular decks. When you queue into ladder, what you're going to be seeing 90-95% of the time. Unfortunately, I can't cover every deck that's possible for you to play against, as that video would be very long and kind of tedious. So we're going to cover, what you're going to be seeing 90-95% of the time when you queue into some of these people on ladder. Also keep in mind that the decks we're going to be covering are the most popular, but the build itself is mine. So if you don't disagree with, or if you disagree with a card or two, or you're like, hey Rob, my build doesn't play, two of this, that's fine. It's the core of the deck what's important. The couple tech cards here and there isn't really that big of a deal. A lot of people kind of freak out because they'll be like, Rob, I can't believe you're playing that card, it's so bad. It's just like 1 out of 30 or 2 out of 30. It's like, that's fine, change the card, dude. Simmer down, bro. All right, so the first class and deck we're going to be covering is going to be the Control Priest. Actually a deck that we didn't see at all once the expansion hit, and about a week or two after that, people started tinkering again with the Mind Blast Priest, even though the Shadow Reaper Anduin did get nerfed. Between Alexstrasza, Shadow Reaper, double Mind Blast, and the ability to use Shadow Visions to get more Mind Blasts, is what really makes this deck shine, is because the burst it can do is upwards of 10 to 15 in a single turn, and Alexstrasza of course brings them down to that 15. You also have the ability to continuously do damage through Anduin, minions on board, and then again just creating more Mind Blasts. I mean, this deck can pump out big daddy damage over the course of 1 to 2 turns. Also, it has the ability to last very long against the everlasting aggro deck that's on ladder. Paladin, Face Hunter, and some of those more aggressive odd rogues. This deck does very, very well against those due to the fact it has some decent early game with Narshire Cleric, Wild Pyromancer, Gluttonous Ooze, Dustbreaker, Mass Dispel, Scale Worm, and of course the healing you get from Divine. So really great sustainability in the early game, with also the ability to combo out some control decks that you may be going against. So some bad matchups for this deck that I can pick out would be the Control Warrior. Anything that is able to go above 30 life is going to get you a little bit of an issue, because not only maybe they can outvalue you, but you won't be able to burst them down like some other decks that don't have healing, like Hunter, Rogue, sometimes Mages, depending on whether or not they've played Jaina already. Warlock is an iffy one, depending on, if you're able to if they drew their dark packs or if they've already used them. So some matchups very favorable, others, a lot harder. Again, depending on the healing and their ability to go above that 30 health mark. Very cool deck though, and not that hard of a control deck to play. Some of the control decks that we've come into contact with, require a decent amount of skill and a lot of knowledge of the class you're going against. This one, not so much. It's a fun, nice, easy control deck to pilot. The next deck we're going to cover is going to be the Spiteful Priest. Unfortunately, again, this is a deck that has been sticking around for a while now, as Spiteful actually has only gotten better, because now the only 10 drops available for it to pull are 2 8/8s, a 7/14, and then 2 12/12s. And one of those 12/12s is Tyrantus, so it actually can't be targeted by hero powers or spells. So 3 out of 5, or 3 out of... No. There's 5 in total that you can, I believe, get, and 3 of the 5 have above that 8/8 in stats, because 7/14 I would rank a little bit better than an 8/8. But either way, the goal of this deck is basically just to curve out the best you can, play a card or minion every turn, I should say, and each one of those turns, the minion that you play for that power level is very, very good. Some people are, hey Rob, why is Cabal Shadow Priest in there? Well, actually, you want to combo your Twilight Alkalite to replace your opponent's 2-attack minion, then go ahead and Shadow Priest. If you don't have Shadow Priest, you can throw another Mind Control if you only like playing one. I actually don't like playing the... I know there's 2 in this list, but I know some people play the Archbishop, or is it the Arch... It's not the Archbishop. It's the 8 mana, summon a spell from your deck and use it randomly. I really don't like that guy, so I don't play him. But for those of you who do like him, you can go ahead and replace a Shadow Priest with one of those guys. I can't remember. It's a Grand Archivist, I believe his name is. But yeah, I just don't like the card, so I don't include him. But he's not like a core part. It's not like playing Spiteful Summoner, Spiteful Priest, the core part of the deck. Gotta have that card. But, whether you run the Garen Archivist or not, it's kind of like, he's not just like the absolute staples of the deck. It's kind of a card that you cannot play with, like I don't. And the deck will still do just as well. If not, in my opinion, I actually think it plays a little bit better. But very, very easy deck to play. In regards to how well this deck performs on ladder against other decks. It's one of the cheapest of the, you know, higher tiered up decks. You know, some of the control decks we'll be looking at, they cost anywheres of 8,000 dust or more, most of the time upwards of 10k or more, but a lot of these spiteful decks they cost less than 4,000 dust, and they can get you to legend. Every deck also that we're going to review in this video can get you to legend. I get that question a lot of, hey Rob, you know, can any of these decks get me to legend? All of these decks are the most popular decks on ladder for a reason. People aren't just playing these decks 90 to 95% of the time because they suck ass. They're playing these decks because they're very, very good. They get the job done, and they do it very efficiently. So the next class we're going to take a look at is going to be my Even Paladin. Or Gray Paladin, for those of you who want to, you know, Gray Paladin, Even Paladin, same thing. Very, very popular deck on ladder. I know some of you are looking at this deck list and you're like, hey Rob, holy crap, Stubborn Gastropod, you're absolutely fucking crazy. It's mostly because of a lot of these decks like turn 4 Molten Giant and Void Daddies and stuff like that. If you don't have a Spellbreaker to deal with it, it makes it really hard. Also Spiteful, so if you happen to play like a Gastropod on 5, they play Spiteful Summoner on 6, your Gastropod can just trade into their giant minion. I know that seems very strange, but for those of you who have seen me play this deck, it actually works out a lot. Sometimes they don't even play Spiteful on 6, even though they have it, just because you played Gastropod. It also gets pulled from Call to Arms, and it's a decent taunt minion. So if you don't like the card, again, guys, the deck isn't built around and act like, you know, the core of the deck is not Gastropod. The core of the deck is playing minions every turn, summoning your recruits, buffing them, Call to Arms, you know what I'm saying, Crystal Lion, Silver Sword to buff minions, playing Sea Giant when the board is full. All those are kind of key staple cards, but if you want to change Gastropod with the Amarni Berserkers or whatever, that's fine. Again, guys, please don't hammer out that I'm playing a different list than you, because again, these are all homebrews, and I know I've said that a million fucking times, but I know there's going to be those people in chat, and I try to take care of like those, I don't want to say stupid comments, because no comment is stupid besides a few that we've actually covered. But I just try to answer all of your guys' questions as efficiently as possible and kind of cover things. So, you know, if I can't answer the comment, one of you guys who actually watched the video to the end will be like, Rob mentioned this here, and here. You're just not that smart. The next deck we're going to cover is going to be the Odd Paladin. So between the Odd and Even Paladin, a lot of people originally were playing Odd at the beginning of the expansion. Then a lot of people said, whoa, Even Paladin's better. Summoning one less dude for like, it seems like summoning one less dude would be worse, but it seems like the cards in the deck flow better, and there's a little bit more synergy with the Even Paladin than the Odd Paladin. But honestly, I think both decks are very, very powerful, and a lot of people think Even Paladin, you play Odd Paladin, they may not play it as much, so they may not understand the power level of the deck and what you can and can't do. So I personally like Odd Paladin a lot more than Even Paladin, just because it's kind of like a different take on things. Plus, you can do some cool stuff with it. If you look at the list here, we've got, of course, a lot of 1-drops, but we look at Sword of Justice, Scalebane, Fungal Mancer, and Level Up. All of those cards, insane. The ability to have them trigger multiple times, you know, Sword of Justice triggering and being able to hero power and get 2 2/2s, and then being able to level those up to 4 4s is absolutely insane. Or putting them next to Fungal Mancers, because Priest is so prevalent, you know, having 4 4s out on the board is fantastic. On top of that, the Prince in the deck, again, not a staple, but a card, you know, playing against a control deck, you really don't want your Fireflies, your, you know, Argent Squires, your Righteous Protectors. You can just change those all to legendaries, makes the deck run a little bit better. And then Uther is in the deck just because he's some heal. A lot of people, when they play against any sort of aggressive based paladin, like Hunter, they will play as if you have no healing, and they will go all in. And if you have any forms of taunts or healing, they absolutely get, like, they just don't play around it at all. Plus, he gives you a 5/3 weapon, because there's not a lot of weapons in this deck besides the Sword of Justice. So most of the time, when you play Uther, you're not overriding an additional weapon or getting rid of a weapon that you would have needed. Just a solid card overall. A change that you can actually put in the deck is the Pixie card that allows you to refresh your hero power. So if you end up playing 2 of those and you play Uther, you can kind of do maybe some cheesy combo with the 4 Horsemen if they don't expect it. And or you can just combo that with your Silver Hands and create 4 a turn instead of just 2. Super good as well. Both Odd and Even Paladins are very, very solid decks, and nothing is wrong with crafting either of them. The next Paladin deck we're going to cover is going to be the Murloc Paladin. Again, a deck that's been around here for quite some meta, so I don't want to cover this one in full detail like I do some of the others that are actually new. This one, again, just plays a bunch of Murlocs, plays Murloc synergies. The Murloc synergies buff the Murlocs in regards to health, you know, their HP, granting them, you know, attack or divine shield, death rattle. The only new inclusions is actually Fungal Mancer, Call to Arms. I wouldn't even say Call to Arms is a new inclusion. It's been around for a while now, but in regards to how long Murloc Paladin's been around, it's kind of a new inclusion. And then the Nightmare. I can't even pretend I know how to say this name. Amalgam. I'll just call him Nightmare. It's a 3-mana 3/4. It counts as a Murloc. You know, it counts as like 5 different things. He works really well in the deck in regards to synergies, like super well. So solid deck, does very, very well. If you're like, hey Rob, I don't know which Paladin deck to craft, just craft whatever you feel comfortable with. All of the decks we're going to be covering have their own power level. They're good in some situations, they're bad in others. Go by what do you think you like, or what do you like? Like, if you don't like playing control decks, you know, you shouldn't try to play control because I say the deck is good, because if you're not good with the deck, you're not going to get results as if you were to play like a more of a mid-range deck that you guys actually, you know, you're more comfortable with. Again, every player is different. I can't tell you exactly what you need to do because, like I said, everybody's different, but I do my best to try to spread the resources around so all players can benefit from what I have to say. Next deck we're going to talk about is going to be the Odd Rogue. Very straightforward, very, I don't want to say very cheap, but again, pretty cheap in regards to some of the other decks that we've covered. Pretty straightforward deck. It's like a mix in between a Face Hunter and a Tempo Rogue. It has the tempo tendencies with cards like Vile Spine Slayer, Leroy Jenkins, SI Agents, you know, South Sea Deckhands, Clan Thug, and just tempoing out decent sized minions need to be dealt with. If not, they lose. It has the potential to do huge burst damage with Cold Bloods, Leroys, Deadly Poisons, plus your weapon. A very powerful deck if your opponent does not deal with your early game minions. The problem with this deck is it has no draw and it runs out of steam very, very quickly. So once you kind of get past turn 4 or 5, if you're not on board and winning the game, you're either playing against another deck that's very similar to yours and you both are like, you know, clamoring to get as many resources as possible to fight for the board, or you're playing against control deck and you either just got, you know, your board wiped or they were just able to deal with what you had early on, which does happen. But a lot of the times control decks can't deal with the amount of aggression that this deck throws down. Again, if you don't like Vicious Fletchling in the decks, or you don't like Wolf Riders, play more Fungal Mancers. If you don't like Fan of Knives, change them out with other things. Again, decks are my build. I ran into a lot of Paladins. I want 2 Fan of Knives. I want to clear the board. It's decent against Hunter as well. Problem with Fan of Knives is it's not good against control classes. So if you're facing a lot of players who are playing control, you put in more Wolf Riders, put in more Fungal Mancers, playing more Paladins, go back to Fan of Knives. You know, test the decks out for you. Every rank is a little bit different in regards to the players that you go against. So I built the decks accordingly to what ranks I was playing at, which is anywhere between rank 5 and Legend. The next deck we're going to cover is some Quest Rogue. Again, super super popular in regards to what it was eventually. Before, you would not see this deck at all. Like, maybe you'd see this deck once every month, if that, right? And now you're seeing it multiple times a day if you're playing often. Very, very powerful deck, because most of the decks that are playing now, if you're playing against the Quest Rogue and you were playing anything but aggro, you're most likely going to lose. And that's just because this deck is so oppressive to any slower mid-range or control deck. The ability for this deck to pump out 5/5s that have charge, or they have rush and lifesteal, because that's what the Scale Hide has, and then the ability to return cards to the hand and play multiple of them once they get Valir out, is just crazy. I mean, this deck can do like 20 more. If this deck has the right setup, it could easily do more than 30 damage in one turn. But at least it does anywhere between 10 to 15 once they get the 5/5s rolling. And even if they have a single or 2 charge minions, they just keep bouncing them back to their hand with their bounce back effects, like the Youthful Brewmaster, Shadow Dancer, Gorgon, Vanish, Shadow Step. I mean, the list just goes on. So very, very good deck right now. Unfortunately, I think this is one of the ones that's going to actually get hit with a nerf, because it's so oppressive in my opinion. Like, the fact that, like, if you're playing a control deck and you get queued into this particular deck, I mean, you just lose. I mean, there's just no winning. It's just, you should concede to save your time. It's that oppressive. But if you're playing, like, let's say a Face Hunter against the Rogue deck, you're like, oh, this is the easiest one of my life. They literally do nothing until turn 5. So moving along to Hunter, we're looking at the Baku / Face Hunter. Pretty simple deck. Again, fairly cheap, 4,100 dust. If you're looking for extremely cheap decks, I recommend taking a look at our budget-based video, where I go over the cheapest, best decks to play. Should be on our main page under tips, and also I'll link it in the description for you guys. But this is a rendition of this particular build is on our on that particular video. But very simple deck. Play minions every turn, go face with them, weave in your hero power as much as you possibly can to do as much damage from that. Decide between, do you hero power, do you play a weapon, do you play charge minion, what does more damage over the course of X amount of turns, turns being how long do you think your opponent has until they get back to the board, because this deck will never win on board late game. This deck is solely meant to just go be as aggressive as possible. Hopefully your opponent drew not a good starting hand and you slaughter them. Because most of the time you're always going to have a 1-drop, you're always going to have a 3-drop, and you're always going to have a hero power. So there's a lot of times in consistency, if you're looking at just consistency, this is probably like each turn you're going to be able to damage no matter what. But if you play like a, a mid-range deck or a control deck, sometimes you drew all of your control cards, none of your, early cards. Sometimes you drew all of your early cards and none of your control cards. There's that mix in here, but this deck all serves one purpose, and that's destroy your opponent as fast as possible, besides giving like Iron Beak Owl, but that's just deal with Void Lords and all those pesky lackeys and stuff like that. Very straightforward deck and actually pretty good right now. So taking a look at Druid, we are looking at the Taunt Druid. This is the most refined version that I could find. I tried playing Taunt Druid on stream. I got absolutely slaughtered. It basically revolves around one thing and one thing only, and that's Hadronox. Playing taunts, playing Hadronox, killing your Hadronox, then bringing him back and cubing him. Unfortunately, I hate decks like this because they revolve around one win condition and one win condition only. And if you don't either draw it or you draw it early on and you don't draw any of your other tools, you just get destroyed. Like, it's a feels bad deck, because if you go through the whole game and Hadronox is bottom 5, the whole game you're like, where's this one card so I can win? And if you draw Hadronox early on, you don't draw, the other taunts that are needed, then you're just like, well, I can't do anything either. So it's a deck that, like, it just one win condition only, and I don't like decks like that, but it is popular right now, so I am going to cover it. So for those of you unfamiliar with how this deck normally runs, Hadronox brings back all taunts that have died on your side of the field. So therefore you play a ton of taunts like Primordial Drake, Lich King, and Sleepy Dragon. You've got Tar Creepers and Golems in there just because, you need early game against aggro classes. From there, you naturalize your own Hadronox so your opponent doesn't silence him or polymorph him or anything like that. And then you go ahead and you play Watching Hour or Witching Hour. And because Hadronox is the only beast in the deck, which is why this deck does not run Malfurion or Spreading Plague. I know I'm going to get those comments for people not paying attention to what I'm saying. They're like, Rob, you don't run Spreading Plague in your taunt deck, you're bad. Those taunts that it summons are beasts, and if you Witching Hour, you could summon a 1/5 beast instead of Hadronox. So when you play Witching Hour, you have a 100% chance to hit that Hadronox to resummon your minions. And then because Witching Hour costs 3 mana and Cube costs 5, you can do them in the same turn as long as you have 8 mana. And then from there, you're basically killing your Hadronox, summoning all taunts, getting a cube that's going to summon 2 more Hadronox, and each Hadronox again is going to fill up your board again. You've got another Witching Hour and another cube. It's just stupid value, but again, it only wins that way. That's the only way it wins. So it's really, this deck is phenomenal versus anything like Control Warrior, Control Mage, stuff like that. Really, it's okay. It's really not bad against a lot of classes. It's just a pretty solid deck if you draw decent. If you don't draw well, like me, you'll never do well with this deck because you need to draw your Hadronox and you need to draw your taunts, because that's just how you win. The next deck we're going to take a look at is going to be the Spiteful Priest, or Spiteful Druid, I'm sorry. I'm sure you guys have seen this deck so many times on ladder, probably just as popular as the Spiteful Priest. Playing a minion every single turn. That's basically just what it runs. 2 spells. You want to play the strongest minion every turn, either trade or go face. Having Prince increases your win rate substantially. Having Spiteful Summoner increases your win rate substantially. Not too much to talk about this deck. Last rotation, it wasn't too popular, but it was popular. But the popularity just exploded once the ability to pull mostly good 10/10s now, because before you could get old gods, you get like Yogg, N'Zoth, and all that kind of crap. And I think there was a couple other really bad 10 drops as well. But now the 10 drop pool is like 12/12s, 12/12s that can't be targeted, or a 7/14. I mean, it's just really, really, really powerful. Not going to talk about the deck too much because you guys know it. Again, fairly cheap, 6,000 dust. I know for those of you free-to-play players, 6,000 dust? Are you fucking kidding me? That's so expensive. But in regards to like building, if you could just build one deck and it costs 5,000, 6,000 dust, or even, if we're looking at some of the other decks, I think it was around 4,000, and you can hit legend with that. You can do that. You can get 4,000 dust in a week or two of playing Hearthstone casually, and you can beat yourself a tier 1, tier 2 deck and have no, saying that you can't hit legend because of that is kind of silly, because we were able to hit legend with our budget hunter, which cost 1,100 dust or something like that. So but the goal shouldn't be legend, guys. It should be having fun, playing decks you enjoy, which is, you know, most of the time we're playing very fun decks and not, you know, tier 1, tier 2 decks, because there's no really fun in playing tier 1 or tier 2 decks. We know they're good, so winning with them provides me no happiness. I want to win with decks that are kind of like, we just don't know if they're good or they suck. So beating a tier 1 deck with a super sucky deck provides me significant happiness. Anyway, looking at the control Shaman, I'm not including the Shudderwook Shaman because it was only popular basically the first week of the expansion. Now that it's toned down, I think I've maybe seen maybe 1 or 2 in the past 2.5 weeks after the first week of the expansion, and I'm not going to include a deck that was only shown twice, but I have seen this control Shaman actually popping up quite a bit, I think due to Asmo, and he was actually able to pull off a really good win rate and a really good streak to legend with a very similar version to a deck like this, and it just has a lot of value in the deck. You know, between being able to survive early game with cards like Lightning Storm and Volcano, you also have Prince in the deck, which buffs all your minions, of course, but the key of this deck is to survive the early game and the mid game through your AoE and taunt minions. Your late game is Elise, Grumble, Hagatha, Calamos, and Shudderwook, and every battle cry that you've played in the deck that's very important, like Serenite, Elise, Stonehill Defender, and Prince. You're sometimes in some games you're able to Shudderwook like 1 to 3 times, and each time it's going to do Prince once or twice. And in some of the games that we're going to be posting, we're actually get like Stonehill Defender. I think he was a 5/9 at one point. We played a 3-mana 5/9 Stonehill Defender, and you can just do crazy stuff with this deck. Super, super value oriented. Very, very, in my opinion, very fun and very interesting deck to play. I enjoyed this deck very, very much. The next deck we're going to talk about is going to be the Control Mage. Hasn't really changed, to be honest, since the last rotation. The only inclusion in this deck that wasn't there was the Voodoo Doll. Besides that, every other card is exactly the same, so I don't want to cover it too much. The reason that this is so powerful is because of Jaina. Jaina is just a fantastic DK hero. The ability to give your elementals lifesteal, summon a water elemental every time you kill a minion, and of course gain 5 armor. Not the most powerful ability, but still it's in there. It could keep you alive if you're playing against Hunter. Just super good, super value oriented. Very long games. Expect to play long games because this is a game. It's a deck that's it's gonna take your opponent down to anywhere between 5 to 10 cards, if not fatigue, almost every game, and pretty straightforward. Yeah, not too much to cover there. It hasn't really changed at all. Besides, like I said, the doll. And the doll makes the deck really good because you can you play the doll, kill one of your opponent's minions, and then use your hero power to kill your own doll, summon a 3/6, and kill your opponent's minion. Next deck we're going to cover is going to be a deck that actually changed significantly, but still the same type of deck. It's going to be the Tempo Mage, or some calling it now the Face Mage, because it's even more aggressive than it was before due to the fact that it's playing more early game drops. So it's actually running like cards like Arcane Missile now, Armani Berserker, Cinder Storm, and we had to make those replacements because it lost its Cabal Lackey, it lost its 5 attack, 5 HP minion. I can't think of her name. But every time you played a secret, she got reduced down. But the deck still runs very, very well. It performs this just as good as it did against the decks that it did well against, such as like Warlock, depending on Miracle Rogue, sometimes Hunter, if it's more of a mid-range Hunter, sometimes Warrior, depending if they're not Baku. Baku Warrior kind of owns this deck, depending on if you draw your counter spells to stop the brawls and shield slams. But this deck just has the ability to blow other decks out. You know, you have a minion to play every turn, you get your free secrets in there, and you just go face with your fireballs and spells, and your opponent doesn't have anything to play, or you're able to counter spell it and stuff like that. I mean, you can just blow people out by turn 3 to 5 very, very easily, and it happens more times than not. But sometimes you'll actually draw very, very heavy in the deck. You'll be like, how the hell do people win with this shit? This is one of those decks that I went on a 10-game winning streak with it, and then the next day I lost like 12 games in a row. It's one of those decks that's like, how the hell did we win with this deck this many times? Or some days you're like, how the hell are we, you know, how the hell is this deck not the most broken deck in the game? I mean, it's just the sickest thing ever. So it's a hit or miss deck, 100%. They used to actually call this deck Casino Mage, because it's like if you hit big, it just destroys. But you know, you could keep putting in money, and eventually you just keep getting nothing. You know, you just keep playing games, and it's just you get wrecked over and over and over again. But sometimes you hit big. The next deck we're going to cover is going to be the Quest Warrior. This is one of the deck I did some heavy grinding with last season. In my opinion, I love Warrior, so almost any Warrior deck I play, I have a lot of fun playing. One of the more fun Warrior decks was our Baku, Big, Control, Dragon, Warrior deck. Super fun deck. It's not included because, again, it's not very popular, but I love the deck. This is going to run the same way the old Quest Warrior did, or Taunt Warrior did. You just quest up, play a bunch of taunts, try to get in that hero power as fast as possible. But this deck actually got a little bit better, not only because it runs Baku and you're able to live in the early game. So, people, I know I'm going to get this question. Hey, Rob, this deck runs Baku, but when you use your Ragnaros and get the quest complete, it's actually going to override, so you don't gain armor anymore. That's okay. You're only using the armor to survive in the early game and to get the armor, so when you do end up changing your hero power, you have some of, like, you know, you have life to play with, right? You've got, you know, anywhere between 10 to 30 extra health, and that you've been able to accumulate prior to playing the Ragnaros. Plus, it does very well against aggro, so sometimes you don't even want to complete your quest, maybe against like a face hunter. You don't need to complete your quest. You can just outvalue the deck, just keep tanking up every turn, playing taunts, and their deck will run out of steam. Their deck isn't meant to deal with that. So, depending on matchups, sometimes you can get away with just not using the Rag hero power. But the new inclusion of the Pixie, do I not have the Pixie in the deck? Yeah, Black Walled Pixie. I knew I had it in there. The picture caught me off guard. I thought it was above Gluttonous Ooze. Anyway, or below it. It allows you to refresh your hero power, so you can go like Rag hero power for 2, Pixie Rag hero power for 2, which is 16 bursts in a single turn if they have no minions out, which is just crazy burst coming from a warrior. So really good inclusion there. The next deck we're going to talk about is going to be Q-Block. I really don't want to talk about this deck at all because it hasn't changed in the slightest. The only change is Voodoo Doll and maybe Joffrey. I call him Joffers because I hate the card. I don't hate the card, but it just reminds me of the guy from Game of Thrones just killing everything. So when he comes out, everything just dies. And that's basically what Joffers did. He just came in there. He's like, I don't like that guy. Kill him. I don't like this. Kill him. Hey, mommy. It's like, oh, shut the fuck up. I'm glad you got poisoned. Anyway. Q-Block probably the best deck in the game. I'm not going to really discuss it, guys. I'm sure if you play this game at all, you've seen Q-Block, and I really don't want to talk about it. It's just, I don't need to tell you guys about it. The next deck, though, the Control Lock. If you want something that's good, but it's not the most broken fucking thing in the game, play Control Lock instead, guys. Don't make every player in this game absolutely hate you by playing Q-Block. Solid deck. It actually beats Q-Block pretty consistently because, you know, they play Doom Guards. You just deal with them through Siphon Soul, Twisting Nether. In the late game, you're able to beat them, whether it's through being able to play your Rin early on, Gnome Feratsuing them because they're going to be tapping probably a lot more than you because they want to get their weapon. You can also, in this deck, tech in Weapon Destruction. I know it's not in this particular list, but you're more than welcome to take out either the Stonehills, the Gnome Feratsus, or that's probably all I would maybe tamper with. Maybe one Voodoo Doll and maybe put in like a Gluttonous Ooze if you really feel like it. One of those. 2 if you're feeling super fucking frisky. But I think 1 Weapon Destruction is fine. Honestly, I'd probably take out a Gnome Feratsu or Stonehill if you really want to play Weapon Destruction. And I didn't want to include it in here because it's all depending on what you're playing. If you're not playing against Q-Block and Paladins, you don't need Weapon Destruction. But if you are, definitely throw in Weapon Destruction in this deck. Same with the Cube version, if that's the route you're going. As you know me, I'll always love control decks, so Control Warlock falls into a really powerful control deck right now. Does well just about against everything, has AoE in the early game, has life gain, has the ability to Everlast with Blood Reaver Gul'dan and Void Lords, has the ability to kill whatever it needs with Siphon Souls and Twisting Nether and Voodoo Dolls. And if you're not doing that, you're playing Rin and putting your opponent's deck on a countdown. I mean, it just does everything. This deck, the only thing it doesn't have is Burst. And if this deck had Burst, it would be the best deck in the game. And guess what Q-Block has? It has everything this deck has, and it has Burst through Doom Guards and Gul'dan. So that's why that deck is just dumb broken. But anyway, that's, I believe, the last deck in our monthly meta. So if I happen to leave anything out, which I think I covered most of it, let me know in the comments and description. So let me know in the comments below if I happen to miss out on anything or you want to elaborate on anything I've said. Have fun out there in the streets. I know this meta doesn't feel quite as different as some rotations because a lot of these decks have stuck around, but I think when the balance patch comes next, after the HTC tournaments. So basically in less than a month, we'll see balance changes hit. The meta is going to evolve even more, and we might see some newer decks that can actually thrive when, you know, decks like Q-Block and maybe Paladin take a little bit off their shoulders and kind of get dumbed down to the level that they should be. So with that, appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you in the next video and or on Twitch. As always, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.